Welcome to the Moon God Pod. I'm your host, JwowLax, and today, wow, we have an FBI agent. Just kidding. We've got the man, Johnny Utah, and he is a member of the Aku community. He is a moon god, and he has literally the greatest online ID that I could have thought of. JwowLax is obviously near and dear to my heart because my friends call me JWoww and I live in LAX. I thought I was being creative, but my guy steals Johnny Utah. Johnny, welcome to the program, and we gotta uncover this reason for the moniker Johnny Utah.
Yeah, man. Well, first, thank you. It's definitely a pleasure to be here and to be part of this community. So, yeah, I mean, look, Johnny Utah from the great early '90s movie Point Break. So I on Twitter I started from being anonymous. That was my real name at one point, anonymous, semi-anonymous, and then in high school, one of my buddies used to call me Utah, and so I'm like, all right, let's go back and bring it back. And so yeah, Johnny Utah's just kind of stuck, and yeah, it's been fun. It's been fun for sure.
I am a huge Keanu Reeves fan. For my money, I don't think he's ever made a bad movie. Now, I'm not saying he is Oscar worthy, but I've never gone to one of his movies and been like, man, that was just really terrible. Although Ronin 47, I was worried. I was like, come on, and then he comes back with John Wick, and I was like, you saved us all. So
Yeah, I mean, let's not. I mean, Patrick Swayze was pretty amazing in that movie too. But I this is a funny story. When I first hopped in a clubhouse room in early 21, somebody invited me up to the stage, and then three people on the stage started shouting lines from that movie. I am an FBI agent, and oh man, I was like, this is this is how it's supposed to be, just having fun.
there, so in Los Angeles, when I first moved here years ago, they used to have a live stage performance of Point Break called Point Break Live, and you would go, and it was a small theater, maybe like 50 or 100 people could fit in, and they would open the show and they would say, we are a low budget theater, so we couldn't really afford to get Keanu to play the role. But since he's not a good actor, we'll just pick somebody from the audience. And I went for my birthday and they selected me. One of my good friends, after I did this, he like responded to a tweet and he was like, you're not the only former Johnny Utah. And he had gotten to do it too. But I didn't like, they had cue cards and I didn't need the cue cards. It was amazing. The coolest thing about it is in this performance, they usually would pick something random, like they'd pick a girl, they'd pick a, like sometimes like a kid or like someone that does not look like Keanu, but I've always thought I kind of looked a little bit like Keanu. And so when I did it, they told me, they were like, this is always cool because now they think that it's a ringer, like this has all been staged and that you're a real actor. And sure enough, after the show, people were like wanting my autograph. They're like, you're a real actor, right? Like you do this all the time. This is the show. I was like, no, like it's legit. So that's my Point Break. That was one of the greatest days of my life, to be honest. So
That's amazing.
yeah. So we had to have you on. You've kind of been in the crypto space. This is not your first rodeo, not your first bear market. Kind of just take us back and work us up to where you first become aware of Aku Dreams and in the Micah Johnson project. But how far back does this rabbit hole go for you?
I mean, yeah, it really starts with just discovering crypto and really taking the deep dive, ignoring it in 15 and 16, and then was on a buddy trip and a ski trip in 2017, and a friend just said, hey, go, still heavily invested in Bitcoin. Why don't you, go, start taking a look at blockchain technology. Another friend that summer recommended, diving into TED Talks. And so, again, just started Googling and really it was a July 4th weekend. I remember it. I spent the entire weekend just running through YouTube videos, learning about Bitcoin, and I was fascinated by Ethereum, and boom, fast forward, I was like, this is it. I can't believe I'm so late to crypto. And so,
Late in 2017. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, these cycles are emotional, right? Because you ride the highs and they're fantastic, and then you the lows are low. So, yeah, I just from there, just kind of fast forward 2018, 2019, just sat back a little bit. Um, I was in a fund at one point and then exited that fund and just went back into Bitcoin. And then when COVID happened, I went again, I double tripled my bets in Bitcoin at the time. And so that was 2020. Spent some time and then discovered DeFi summer, the end of and I was 2-3 months too late. I hopped into DeFi summer in August. I farmed sushi on the first sushi weekend for anybody who discovered yield farming. Then it was just an incredible learning experience. And so it was also at that time that NFT, I started seeing NFTs in my thread, and I said, I don't, I was certain it was wash trading, right? I was like, why would anybody buy this? And so really just kind of kept pushing forward with DeFi and in 2020. And then one of my friends pushed me into he's like, God, I really love this Trevor Jones, Bitcoin bull, and I really would like to acquire one. And then Trevor Jones dropped on Nifty Gateway, and that was really my first introduction to, wow, I kind of got it, And I also thought about, hey, you can form communities around these digital, images, and so that's how I got started, and really haven't looked back. I think things change so quickly in this market, and I think you have to have high conviction. But if you do have high conviction, I think long term these bets will pay off.
I find it interesting. Like, I guess I kind of 2017, was when I first kind of, everybody was kind of talking about Bitcoin and the rush to 20,000. I met a kid that had basically, became a millionaire in less than a year because of Bitcoin. There's all those stories. So there was that attraction. I didn't really deep dive into it until NBA Top Shot. That kind of onboarded a lot of people. And that's, of course, because of basketball. And I love basketball, and that's my background. I find it interesting now that we're kind of deep in this bear market, and we could go even deeper. It's very, very quiet. And for somebody that's kind of gone through that, like the altcoin and then, like the waves, what is it that kind of either wakes people back up to kind of come back and trust it per se? Like, does there need to be a new iteration? Because that's what's NFTs to me just made sense. And that was enough to kind of keep me around. So in this, as we come out of this, do you think like there needs to be a new iteration or just a new appreciation? Or
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess I'd frame it this way, in that, when I kind of shut down in 2018, and really just went back to my full-time gig and wasn't focused on crypto, reflection, that's really where the big money was made, right? 2018, 2019. So if you stayed engaged in those periods, and so for me, when I think about this bear market, that's exactly how I'm thinking about it. Like, I believe NFTs are the killer app for blockchain. I believe that if I stay engaged and I keep building my own network and brand and connections in the space, that whether that bull market is, late 23, 24, or maybe it's 25, right? It could be 25. But if I stay engaged in this period and continue to build, then it's generational wealth. Because it's all about networks, and I think that's really the power of this, right? If you've got your Web3 network, right, and your Web3 interconnections, I mean, this thing it can be magic.
So I find it interesting. Like, there was the Blake Griffin video that is just being, poor guy, like he's being crushed. I'm like, explain to me what an NFT is, and I don't want to go that elementary, but I always kind of explain to people that, like this code is almost like a piece of gold, and the NFT is almost like, imagine that gold becoming like a bracelet or a ring or like jewelry, like there's an artistic value to it. um I think that it's interesting when you look at like the artists that have emerged, and I'm curious, like you mentioned Trevor Jones. So, Micah, you know certainly Ferocious People, some of these artists, I think, there's a different level. And then we kind of get into like the PFP, where I find it funny, where it's just like they created this like computer generated thing, and then they get all the money, and then they're like throwing all these ideas. I've kind of thrown it all the way around, but like for you, what was it that you understood about NFTs that made you say like, yes, this is it? Was it more of the artistic, or the utility?
One is, I think speculation is always part of it, right? So that's still number one. But I think that when it resonated with me was what it was, the connection with the artist, right? Trevor, I connected to Trevor fairly early. We had a couple calls, and he's a good human. And from the ability to essentially be a patron for a creator was really something that kind of said, okay, I get it, I understand that. I think recurring revenue royalties are important to creators, and it gives them a stake, right? So yeah, there's different levels. Obviously, I think creation in the space is in what it takes to be a successful artist in this NFT world. It's not a layup, right? Requires a lot of work. And I see a number of rising stars, who I know personally, who are, they're still grinding, right? And they'll be here in a year or 2 years, right? So that I think was number one for me. Just I got to know a lot of just really cool people.
Did you mint Genesis, Aku Genesis?
I think I bought it secondary, the first one secondary, and then minted every other. Yeah, so for me, that story is that Will Savis had posted it about chapter one on Twitter, and he's a fellow moon god, and they do he's been collecting for a lot longer than I have, but I was like, wow. And then I saw it, and I was like, wow. I thought his chapter one was just absolutely insanely cool. Tells a great story. I was like, wow, I can really get behind Micah and the team. And he just kept producing just incredible work. And so, yeah, I absolutely fell in love with it.
So Micah was recently on a podcast, The First Mint, and I remember when the First Mint and LG Dissett were starting out. We actually had him as a guest on our older podcast, and the biggest takeaway, because the problem for me is like every time I listen to Micah and like a lot of these talks, it's like it's a story I've already heard, so I'm looking for like that little gold nugget that it's like, oh, I didn't know about that. But one thing that resonates with him, and Lovox and I found in the first time we ever interviewed him, his confidence is just, it's almost insane. Like, because he's asked, like, do you have, like, what's your confidence level? He's like, I just always knew. He's like I knew this was going to happen. Like, I knew it was big. And what's funny is 2 years ago, he was like, he just knows. When I first met RD, that was one of the first questions I said, what is it about Aku that makes you bullish? And he's just like, Micah. What is your response to that, and just from a personal advantage?
Yeah, I mean, it's Micah, right? I mean, it's all about Micah when it telling the story and building a world around dreams. It was a story that resonated with me from day one. And I'll share a story a little bit later about why it resonates. But I do think it's really important. How do we do our part to provide education and dreams for kids. And I think it's really important, right? And if you just look at society as a whole, where things are headed, and generally it's the underserved that aren't represented. And so if you can provide an equal and level playing field for these kids, provide a loving environment for these children, then we're going to have a better world, right? And that's what everybody needs to focus on, is that while today I think value alignment is really important. I think we see it, and you can even go back and look at these interviews and who's in the interviews. There's just good people, right? At the core, they're just good people. They're value aligned, right? We believe in the mission, so we're not going anywhere, right? So we can sit back and let this thing play out, but it's the belief in Micah that's going to take this thing, to the next level.
So I want to kind of get put on my like kind of devil's advocate hat and just say, the saying, like, nice guys finish last. Like, how do we avoid that? Because I will say that, Micah and the team have taken different marketing approaches, and it's very, very organic, very grassroots, as opposed to like an aggressive marketing campaign, certainly by many of these other projects, successful or not. Is there an element where it's kind of like like they need to employ some of these, or it's just a matter of time, and the good shall prevail?
Sure. Yeah, I think it's a great question, because I think I've learned a lot about social, and I've learned a lot about social by failing, and it's very, very hard. And everything you say is accurate. And I met somebody at Basel who shared a comment, and this really resonated with me. He's like, "Hey, here's the priorities in Web3. One, it's about speculation, right? We've heard it's all about number go up. Second is about rarity, and that's about, hey, it's collectability, right? So people do want more rare things. And then the third default is community, right? And that's where everyone kind of falls back, right? Okay, we're locking arms, we're all together in this thing, we're gonna make it work. And then the fourth, he said, is like charity, fundraising. And I would categorize that as value aligned. And I'd say it's very low on the priority plate of most people in this space. And so that is fundamentally the root issue. So until the market expands and more people come into the market, I think we will lag. Now, can Micah and team and Roger kind of start thinking of other ways and social strategies? Absolutely. And I'm sure they're thinking about those things. Mm-hmm. But I think at the core, you still need your core. And I think Micah's got an incredible core base of supporters. And I don't think that's going to change. But we still need to find, 1,000 to 2,000 more people who are all in on the mission, right? If you're all in on the mission, I would argue that in 2 years that this should be a top 10 project. It should be.
What keeps it from already being a top 10 project? Because I would argue, floor price, obviously not. But like, this is what actually keeps me up at night and bothers me, is when I look at the art, there's nothing even close. Now there are artists like, I think Ferocious, his art. I'm not crazy about Beeple's art, but I think it has like a lot of social impact, and I do think it's very creative. So if we're just doing it like in just pure art, I still put Aku like way up there. I don't like the idea of like my community is better than your community, because like I think it's easy for the Bored Apes or the CryptoPunks to have an amazing community when your one PFP is worth $100,000. Like, sure, whatever the price is, that community is great. Top Shot had an amazing community in January of 2020. So like it just kind of hurts my soul when I see some of these bigger influencers and they mention the Clone X, the apes and stuff, and we're kind of not even in that discussion. And it's like, what? There's nobody that has the publicity, real life publicity. When you look at the Time magazine, Disney, Visa, NASA, like it's like, wow, we have really crushed it, and yet,
100%.
like you're even saying 2 years to be a top 10. So
Hey, look, I hope it's sooner, right? I mean, it's not going to change my conviction in the project, but um, I think the social game is really important, right? When has Rug Radio or Farouk ever talked about Aku, right? In passing, maybe once or twice,
mhm.
right? But they don't
Well,
really.
I know one time they talked about it for sure, and that was our one black eye, So
Well, I mean, I think that's. I mean, let's go. I'm going to go JWoww. JWoww. I mean, that is this social networks, right? So these guys can't even recognize the incredible work that's being done. Like that to me is, that has to change.
mhm,
But is it one of my top 10 now? Absolutely.
mhm,
Is that going to change? No. But as the roadmap and stuff becomes more clear, I think it's really tied to the macro. Macro improves, the market improves. I think we'll be well positioned. So, yeah, it's a challenge, right? It's a challenge for all projects right now. But I'm still bullish on the future of what Mike is doing.
oh, you know, the market can get anybody down, and then, like I said, like I hear him on the podcast, like he's very good about like putting something out there. Like he posted something today, like a screenshot of like Aku World or something, and I'm like, I was never gone, but like, I get that punch in the arm, and I'm like, all right. It's kind of like we're on the bus, and I kind of dozed off, and someone nudges me. It's like, I'm up, we're ready. So I want to go to kind of the Moon God level is obviously like kind of the ultimate. So I'm curious, when did you decide? Because in the very beginning, we thought 10 chapters, $1,000 a chapter. A $10,000 commitment on any level is a big commitment. So what was it? What was that moment where you said, "All right, I'm going to become a moon god," and multiple times over?
Yeah, it was probably chapter two. That just absolutely loved chapter two, and I have the number two of chapter two, and so I was like, oh my gosh, I got probably the most rare out of any future drop, and then it turns out there was the snafu on chapter three. That chapter three then became the bottleneck, but like for me, I just really love the mechanics of it. I love the gamification of it. Didn't know that Akutars were in the future at that point, but still love the idea of turning that IP into something, and what that means for holders, I don't know. But it was a pretty easy decision because I generally look at the market in terms of like conviction bets, and in this case, I was like, yeah, I'm in.
Akutars or chapters? We find that most people in this community like kind of lean one way or the other. Would you consider like if you had $10,000 that you had to burn, but you could only pick buying Akutars or buying more chapters?
It would go Akutars. I love chapter one and chapter two. I think those are still my favorites, but you've got the uniqueness and rarity in the Akutars, and I think there is some utility that likely will come from those. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
pretty easy for me. I've gotten into the PFP game a little bit, so
Yeah.
it resonates.
You've got a lot going on, so much that you have dived, headfirst into Web3 yourself. Um, I don't think our community knows exactly what that involvement is. We were joking before we started, like last year, everybody was quitting their day job and going full thread into Web3. and things have kind of changed. But um, you've kind of done that. Kind of speak to what the project was, and certainly kind of bring back the story on like how Aku and like children tie into that.
Yeah, I think it's certainly it's a story to tell, and it's why I'm in this space. It's why I love this space. But um, so when I started a company called Favorite. So I founded Favorite, and the idea is like, hey, can you do more to give back? And that really started with COVID, right? And really it started with a few simple things. It's that, you know, when COVID happened, I ate well. My wife and I were doing great. We fed our kids. We bought our kids computers. Overall, we were healthy. Life was good, and it was at that moment I'm like, what at that time it was not good for a lot of people, particularly the service industry, particularly lower income families, under resourced communities. And so I was like, hey, I want to find a way to do more to give back. And so started iterating on some ideas, and whether it was creating a token, creating a platform, and at the end of the day settled on like, hey, let's create an art collectible and prove out, can you do this? Can you do good with NFTs, right? And so it was through a number of connections in Clubhouse. We built a team. We brought together 50 artists and created this art collectible. So it's been a journey, right? But as with most things in this space, it comes down to timing, and our timing was not good. We were launching the weekend Russia invaded Ukraine. We had great momentum going into it, and then it just came to a screeching halt, because the world changed that day. Yeah. So we delayed the launch a couple weeks and then restarted, but never really gained our full speed. But I learned a ton. Like, I wouldn't trade anything, and the people I met and the connections I met. So we're gonna pivot that project, right, into hey, what do you do with this incredible artwork? And so but what we did do early was we donated to 3 organizations out of the gate. We said, hey, we're going to stick to what we said we're going to do, and we're going to donate funds. And the first school we chose was Meeting Street Schools in Charleston, South Carolina. So that's in my hometown. It's a public-private charter school in an under-resourced community. And so it is an incredible school and doing incredible things and changing lives. And so that story of Aku and a kid dreaming really just ties really well into that organization. And so the story I have that I think I think is important to me, because it really set the stage for what I think is important to giving kids a chance. And that was as we were waiting in the lobby, there was a greeter at the school greeting the kids as they walked into school that day. And these were kids that were running a few minutes late to school. The greeter hugs the kids and says, he shows them an incredible amount of love. And these kids were smiling, they were happy, and they were walking to their class. And for me, I'm like, it really defined what it is for these kids to be at that school. And the founders of that school really believe that if you provided an educational experience similar to a wealthy child in a private school, that those children would excel. And they're proving that out today. So to me, it's just perfectly in alignment with Aku. It's perfectly in alignment with what I personally felt. And so we are making a difference, and you learn in Web3 with experiences, right? But you can do some incredible things, with the right people.
I'm curious when you're learning, like, from the inside, because I'm not very tech savvy, so I always saw like the value, and like when a lot of these original PFP projects were coming out and they were just pretty much just auto generated, I was like, man, I wish I could figure that out. Not gonna happen. It takes some conviction and just the willingness to learn. So what I'm curious, what have you learned? What's been the most valuable lesson from the inside since like that now you have a newfound respect for these projects that without diving into it yourself you would have never really known.
Yeah, so there's, I mean, tons of lessons, right? I mean, there are a few top lessons that you know, for me, I'd say, you know, and it's all in my pin tweet, but basically, you know, having a project manager to like keep the schedule, right? Project management's super important, right? People miss deadlines all the time. You know, if we were 45 days early, probably would have been a different story, would have minute out, right? That's just kind of the nature of this piece. And then the second piece, just learning about the business side of it, is that social's hard, right? Social was still hard then. I underestimated it.
Mhm.
And so um, that's the piece that, yeah, go ahead.
When you say social, do you just mean like social growth, like just like growing like a following for like Twitter or Instagram and engagement? Is that the difficulty in social?
100%. Yeah. You know, it's you're fighting for mind share, right? And how do you build mind share? It's the attention economy, and until you have attention, it's very difficult, you know. And that's why I've counseled some folks. It's like, look, you know, they need to understand how difficult it is. You know, I've people have reached out to me and said, hey, I'm going to launch this project in 30 days, and I said, you shouldn't,
Yeah.
right? You're not ready, uh, and they won't understand it until they experience it themselves, for the most part. But it's difficult.
So pre-COVID, I had a social media company where, you know, I like had clients that I ran their social media, and I've got a number of influencer pages that I've since let go dormant because I was done. Like it is legit a full-time job. You know, one thing that was different, like when I was kind of starting in that game, 2017, 2018, predominantly is, you know, very organic. What you're actually seeing with TikTok. TikTok is super organic. Um, you know, you can have like a random, you know, a food video of you eating chicken wings and get 1 million views. Like that's never going to happen on Instagram today. And one of the biggest problems I had with getting clients is I'm like, you got to pay. Like this is not free. Like just because you can use a flat platform, like anything, you know, like gaming is today now. Like you can play the game for free, but you got to level up. And you know, like if you want a good 2K team, not get waxed, like you got to spend money. And that's the hardest thing to understand is even in like Web2 social, you got to pay to play now for
Yeah,
legitimately. Um,
I think that's 100% correct, and that's something that you have to really budget wisely. It's yeah.
I true story. Like I had an influencer page that I created called Carpe Daily, and it was just like motivational art and stuff. And when I was plugged in and I knew exactly what I was doing, the first post I ever did got 30,000 likes and I got like 20,000 followers from one post. But that is impossible to do. You know, like you cannot do that unless you're like that girl on that new TV show Wednesday who puts up an Instagram and 10 days later she's got like 10 million followers. Then that's different. That's the best strategy. Just you know, become super famous and then start a page. You know, I remember, um, crap. I think it was like Logan Paul or one of the Paul brothers like started a page just for his dog. You know, and that page has
Exactly.
10 million. You know, and like that's how it's done. So you're 100% right. Like that is the challenge, and it's getting tougher. Um, I want to kind of segue where you know I want to kind of start wrapping this up, and but I want to make sure that we covered everything that was kind of important with what you're doing in the Web3 space because I do think um, you know much with Micah and like the attention to education. You know, I can tell you this, timing or not, if you've been able to help out a school, like you've already won. it just depends on how big of a spread do you win. Are you winning by 5 or are you winning by 30? You know.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. No, the wins are great, right? And 50 plus artists that came together and met some incredible artists and Gabe Weiss, Lindsay, Infinite Mantra, and so many more have been super helpful, and the team has been incredible. Yeah, I would like to just share a couple of quick things. But I talked a little bit about pivoting, right? You have to pivot in this market, and you adjust and you evaluate. So Kindred Hearts is the project, and we've got minted about a third of the supply, and we are pivoting basically to say, hey, look, our initial intention was to give away 20% and then fund, work through all the other components of developing the team and building out the business. But we've pivoted to basically saying, hey, this is an art collectible, and we're going to donate half the proceeds, 50%, to nonprofits. So we are going to relaunch in the middle of January, and we're actually partnering with the American Heart Association. So really using this as a test case for the Heart Association, and really looking at like, hey, look, can we use this for good? And so people are really excited about it because it really kind of shifts the narrative to like, hey, we're not going to have a roadmap, we're not going to have a Discord. It's really about the art and recognizing the artists who've contributed to the project, the creative direction of Janine Shannon Penn and Be Creative and the other folks who've helped build this thing. It's really it's really an opportunity to showcase the whole team and the artwork, because it's great artwork, right? And can you actually use it for good?
I'm kind of curious, like, how important was art in your life before all of this?
Yeah.
By telling you, when I was 14, my parents took me to London. My mother's, from England, so we're in the British Museum, and there's pictures of me sleeping in chairs because I was just like, this is the most boring thing ever. Now, like, I by no means like an art curator or like snob, but I found the art that I really like and appreciate and have like an emotional reaction when I see art. Is that kind of your experience, or has it always kind of been part of your life?
Very, very similar. Yeah, I'm more into art now than I was, pre NFTs, and I also share that with people, artists. Like this is this is to onboard people into the art world, and
Mhm.
that's why there is this renaissance in art. Yeah, so I'm much more likely to buy a piece of art today than I would have, even 5 years ago. I mean, we have some pieces, but mostly just local artists who we've supported.
It's amazing because like, and Michael started that way. He was doing physical art in the very beginning and having shows and stuff, and then he moved in and you know wow, you can actually go to school and get that art degree and actually make a living doing art now. You don't have to cut off your ear and move to the south of France, and wait till you die. Like, that's it's I think it's very important, and I think uh coming out of COVID, and where this kind of world is right now, like, an appreciation for art is needed, not just desired, but like needed more than ever. So I love what you're doing, and I love that we're in the same community as well. Um, we always kind of wrap up this show with our feel good question. I have to go Point Break a little bit. What is Point Break like your favorite movie?
I mean, it's definitely up there.
Oh, it's got to be.
I mean, there's a lot of great movies for sure.
Right. Um, so my question is going to be a Keanu question, but do you go Neo or John Wick?
Oh man. Um, I mean, probably Neo because I watched the I've watched the Matrix a few times, but yeah, it's Keanu's the best.
So
Incredible actor, just incredible.
I heard a great theory that John Wick is if Mr. Anderson had not taken the pill and stayed in the Matrix. I heard that as a theory. I was like, I go down those rabbit holes all the time. So you live in Charleston. You're a beach community guy. Um, my favorite question is, where would you like to travel that is unique to like what you would like to see? Like, we always hear like, oh, I'd like to see the pyramids or the Eiffel Tower, but something that most people, wouldn't respond, but like something that you've heard about that is very unique and special to you that you would like to visit.
Yeah. So a lot of great choices. I mean, whether it's Portugal or somewhere in Europe, but I think Greece is on the list. Haven't
Me,
been there. I've heard great things about the Mykonos and the beaches, and so that's on the bucket list at some point.
yeah, I've got a couple Greek friends here in Los Angeles, and they're like, you got to come to Greece. You got to come.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot in Greece, and I love 300 too. So Sparta, of course, every Greek that I've met is from Sparta. I don't buy it, but they're, of course, I'm Spartan. Yeah, that's good.
That's amazing.
That's good stuff. So, the other thing is our final question: who would you like to see on the podcast? And the caveat is that you have to help us get them on.
Oh, that the damn caveat,
Because there's a lot that I'd like to get on, but
let's go big, and let's get people on the show. Yeah, let's go people. Give him a shout out. And it's funny, I've actually talked to Micah about this, trying to get Micah to come to Charleston. So there's a lot of reasons to do that.
Isn't Beeple from South Carolina?
Yeah, Beeple is. He lives in Charleston. Yeah,
you know Beeple.
I know people who know people, but
okay. I'll take that.
I don't personally know people, but it's a small town. We maybe we could get him on the show.
Crazy, Charleston, South Carolina. Yeah,
so we'll do this. We'll see if Micah gets a chance to review this, but see the episode. But there's an event in the spring in Charleston, and I know the organizer, so I'm going to ping the organizer, see if we can invite Micah to come to Charleston, and then maybe you could come to Charleston, and then we fish people to come do an interview live with you guys. So I think that'd be a score for all of us.
I will say that like when people did Joe Rogan, it was kind of like, oh, people like you want like that's why like companies have spokesperson. Like, I don't know if you ever saw that movie with Aaron Eckhart, Thank You for Smoking, about the big tobacco spokesman, because he was just so like eloquent and sharp. Like, sometimes
listen, I'm all about building local connections. so
you're not going there, but he is a very interesting guy, but I don't know that he sold Joe Rogan in the community on NFTs, but it's a hard sell. It's a hard sell. So
yeah. I don't think I saw the episode, but yeah, we'll pivot. We'll come up with some other ideas if we can't.
He's had time. He's got plenty of money and time since then to train and be more eloquent, and more promotional. So we're good. We're good. Well, Johnny, any closing thoughts before we call it a day?
No, man. I just appreciate you reaching out. Love everybody in the community, and just let's keep grinding. And I think what you're doing is great work for the community, and we'll just keep building it.
And call to action for your project and where they can find more about it.
Sure. So kindredhearts.io is the project, and it's kindredhearts.io is the Twitter handle. So yeah, I just encourage you to mint when we kick this campaign off. It's mint will be 0.05 ETH, and the goal is to really raise funds and do more to really bring more people into this space, and that's really what it's all about. Let's grow the ecosystem, grow the base, and Aku is going to rise to the top.
Absolutely. Well, it's been another episode of To the Moon God Pod. Hopefully you guys can like, comment, share. That's how we get the word out. And today, man, great chopping it up with the Johnny Utah. He's not an FBI agent, but he is a hell of a guy, and he's a moon god. So for JwowLax and Mr. Johnny Utah, we will see you next time.